Hi everybody, welcome to today's webinar on how to write a winning bid response. I think we're about ready to get going, so we'll get started now. So today's session is going to be a practical session for suppliers looking to improve bid responses and increase win rates. So I'm Nell, I'll be presenting today. I'm a bid manager at Advice Cloud, and joining me is Christina from our marketing team, who will be facilitating the webinar today. So today's session, we're going to cover what good looks like when it comes to bid responses and how you can set yourself up for success once a bid is underway. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss future content. We've got loads more advice and practical sessions on selling to the public sector, just like this one. You can also follow us on LinkedIn for regular updates, tips, and guidance on public sector sales and procurement. So today what we're going to be covering are basically the 3 stages of bidding. So pre-bid, the actual bid process, and then post-bid. So today's session is going to focus primarily on the bid process and how to write a strong response. We'll cover off some common mistakes and how to avoid them. And then we'll finish off with how we at Advice Cloud can help you to be writing the best bids you can. And then there'll be time at the end for a Q&A session. But obviously, as any questions come into your mind, if you just pop them in the in the Q&A box, Christina's keeping an eye on those. So first of all, some introductions. So who are Advice Cloud? So we are a team of public sector procurement specialists, and we're framework and bidding experts. So as a team, we've got over 10 years in public sector procurement, working with suppliers and buyers. We have a 94% average bid quality score, and we're an APMP-certified bid team. So we're all here and available to be working with suppliers to help you get the most out of your bid process. So the 3 stages of bidding and where the bid writing stage fits in. So what is the bid stage? Basically, the bid process can be broken down into 3 distinct stages. So pre-bid, which we've done a webinar on previously, and I'll be recapping in a sec. The bid process, which we'll be talking about today, and then the post-bid section, which we will be discussing in a future webinar. So the bid stage is where you plan and write a specific bid. It would usually be following the ITT release and once the bid is actually underway. So everything from ITT release through to submission is what we're going to be talking about today. So to recap what was covered previously, before a tender lands, strong suppliers are already preparing to win. So getting involved with the different customers that they want to work in, planning things like an ideal customer profile and what it is you're offering. It might be building out a target account list so that you know that you're focusing on the right organizations and buyers, conducting things like market research and competitor analysis to let you understand where you fit within this process and where your strengths and weaknesses are. It's also relationship building, so engaging early with buyers so that you can really be tailoring the offering to them. And then once an opportunity starts to come out, we can do the qualification stage. So this allows you to decide which opportunities are worth pursuing and which are not quite right. And the qualification stage as well can allow you to think about future plans in terms of if an opportunity is not right now, how can you make it so that that would be the right opportunity in future? So all of these pre-bid steps lay the groundwork for writing stronger, more strategic bids as you move forward. So this webinar was held previously, and if you haven't seen that, make sure to take a look at the Knowledge Hub on our website for the recording. So we're going to do a quick poll. Christina, if you want to pop that poll up on the screen. The question we're asking at the minute is, do you use a qualification process when working out what opportunities to bid on? Okay, so from what I'm currently seeing, there's a bit of an even split between, yes, we have a formal, clear process, which is great, and yes, but it's more informal, ad hoc. So both of those are kind of good ways to think about qualifying. You know, sometimes there does need to be a bit of flexibility a bit of informality, but also having a clear formal process gives you something to build from. And then we've got a few that are, we bid on everything that fits our service, which is also fine. There are different stages and ways of thinking about qualification. So this is something as well that Advice Cloud can help with if it's an area that people feel they need some additional support. Okay, so we're going to move on now to the kind of meat of this session, which is writing a response. What makes a bid? So the stages of writing a bid, in an ideal world, bids can be quite quick turnarounds. You know, you can often have a bid that maybe needs to be back within 2 weeks. But in an ideal scenario, these would be all the stages that you would hit within your writing process to ensure that you've got a really strong bid that you're submitting. So schemes and bid planning can come early in the process as we're trying to figure out exactly what it is we want to say. Then you've got the actual writing of the response and the reviews within that to make sure that we're kind of sticking with the plan that we started with, and then submission. Starting with storyboarding. So within the bid process, this basically helps to plan the structure, the messaging, the flow of a response before writing begins. And it can help ensure clarity and consistency across the bid. Usually bids can have multiple writers who are kind of inputting on the different sections and like different bits that they have knowledge on. That can lead to a kind of disjointed bid, but doing storyboarding at the start and allowing time for reviews can help give a clear, consistent voice and should let everybody know exactly what the messages are that you want throughout the bid. So it helps to avoid blank page syndrome and aimless writing where people are just sort of throwing in what they think is needed. It can align your response with the evaluation criteria and buyer priorities and helps you identify any gaps early. So if there are any gaps in evidence or examples or input you need from other teams, it surfaces that early in the process so you've got time to build that content out. Importantly, with this stage, it should be flexible. So for a DOS stage 1, the process can be scaled down in comparison to a more complex bid where additional information is needed. So how to storyboard? First things first are reading the requirements really carefully. So what are they really asking? What is the purpose of this question? Following that, you break down the question and identify each part that needs answering. So this bit really can be as simple as kind of highlighting each bit within the question that requires a response. Following that, you can sketch a structure out. So use headings, subheadings, bullet points, and then you map your key messages. So what are the things you really want the evaluator to remember and that you want to get across within this question? The next bit is to assign ownership. So who is writing, who's reviewing, and who is inputting? This part is really crucial. If somebody has responsibility for writing that answer and somebody has responsibility for inputting on that answer, that is really important to know so that you're not left with gaps down the line or a half-finished response because people thought it was somebody else's responsibility. And then finally, you want to be able to build in your win themes. Running a win themes session early on helps you figure out exactly what your messages are. And these could be through the process and help bring forward your USP throughout your runs. So that is storyboarding. And I've also briefly mentioned win themes. So these are specific buyer-focused messages that show why you're the best choice. People often refer to it as the golden thread that's running through the bid. So an example of a win theme that might be used could be things like faster insights, lower costs, proven results. So the faster insights could be something that, you know, the client is asking for within their bid. Lower costs helps demonstrate how you're going to be helping the client to maximize value. And proven results can demonstrate that you've done it before. So having these as your win theme allows you then to refer to these throughout your answers to really hammer home that point. So it's important to mirror the buyer's language to reinforce that alignment and really show how you would be a strong partnership. And you can help evaluators remember your solution by tying back to any early engagement you've had with them. So the next stage is bid planning. So once you've had your session to kind of discuss storyboarding, to choose the win themes and plan all of that, planning the bid is really important. It helps to break the bid into manageable, clearly owned tasks with deadlines. So everybody knows what the expectations are. You want to have your final deadline for submission, obviously, but then working backwards from that point, it's a really good idea to then factor in how many reviews do we want to do? How long do we need to turn around feedback from reviews? And you can plot those points out within your bid planning process to make sure that you have time for everything. You can use tools like content plans or bid matrices to help stay organized. And it's really important to build in time for internal reviews before submission. So a good plan keeps your bid on track and improves your chance of winning. So once you've done this kind of early stage of planning, storyboarding, and win themes, comes the actual writing of the bid. So if you've already had time to do those early stages, you should have quite a clear idea about what it is you're wanting to say in the bid, and everybody on your team should know what they're writing and what they need to include. So when it comes to actually writing, stick closely to the question and the scoring criteria. So it feels like a really simple thing, but it's something that's quite easy to miss, is actually answering the question that you're being asked. So make every word count, particularly in public sector bids. We can see that there are often either character counts or word counts or page counts. So you really want to be maximizing the impact that you get through each word that you use. So think about using language with no filler, no fluff or marketing jargon. You really want to just be focused on answering the question and demonstrating the best of your capabilities. Mirroring the buyer's language and the buyer's priorities is a really quick way to flag to an evaluator that you are answering each part of the question, and it helps them to mark, basically. Another thing is making sure that you match your response to what's actually being asked. So you might see questions that are, how will you do this thing? Or demonstrate evidence of when you have. So when you're answering those questions, if you're answering how you will, it's important to say what you will do within this contract to achieve this thing, versus demonstrate when you have done this previously. That's an opportunity to bring in a case study and to talk about previous experience where you've done this. Whatever claims you're making, be sure to back them up with evidence, examples, and outcomes. This is a really good way to kind of demonstrate your experience and your strength in this position. And use clear signposting. So help evaluators to find your answers quickly. So that's what I was talking about at the start with the mirroring the language. If you have a different way of referring to things internally, it's best if you can map to the language of the question, because it just really clearly signposts to an evaluator that you are answering what it is they're asking for. And reviews. So reviews can often be left to the end of the process and just seen as something that needs to be done right before submission. But best practice is trying to include reviews throughout the process. So at Advice Cloud, typically we would run a 3-stage review process. So throughout, to help ensure that the messaging is there, that you're keeping on the messaging, and then finally to ensure consistency and compliance. So good reviews can really mean the difference between scoring well and scoring highest in a process. So we recommend using a structured process, so pink, amber, red reviews. So a pink review might be an early stage review of the bid structure and storyboards. It would focus on strategy, win themes, and whether the response is currently aligning with client needs before full writing begins. An amber review would be a kind of mid-stage review of partially written content. So that's there to check whether key messages are coming through, compliance is on track, and improvements can still be made before any finalisation. And then red review would be a final review of the kind of near complete or completed bid. So this might be right before it's sent to senior leadership for sign off and submission. So this focuses on overall quality, the consistency of voice and consistency of message, compliance, and just readiness for submission. So each stage helps ensure that the proposal is delivered strategically, clearly, and persuasively. It's also really important to bring in a fresh pair of eyes. So ideally someone outside the writing team. I think when you're really in the weeds with a bid, you focus on exactly what it is you're doing. But sometimes when somebody else reads it from outside the writing team or outside the company as a kind of fresh independent voice, it can help highlight things that aren't clearly explained or need a little bit more depth. So it's a really useful tool in terms of the writing. So I would see reviews as one of the most important parts of the bid process. So again, we're going to have another quick poll. So this is what best describes your current bid review process. So one thing that's great to see from these results that are coming out are that the majority of you have some form of review process, which is brilliant. That's really important for kind of helping the writers ensure that they're on the right track. We've got quite a few we've got a structured internal process and we do basic reviews internally, but it's ad hoc. Again, I think the most important thing is just that there is a process for reviewing, whether that's somebody signing off on the content to say, yeah, we're happy with this, somebody to be checking for proofreading or compliance with what the bid is asking for. It's a really helpful thing just to take some of the pressure off that bid writing team and to give a bit of an outside perspective. So that's great to see. Brill. So we will be moving on to the submission stage. So this is at the end of the bid writing process. Once you've got everything there, you're happy with your content and you are good to go, submission would be the final stage. With that in mind, I would still say it's important to think about the submission from the very beginning of the process in terms of double checking all portal requirements, file types, naming, formats. That's something that's really important to be thinking out throughout the bid process, and also to be checking any clarification questions. So sometimes during the bid process, CQs might be released that have an update on, oh, actually, we would like this document to be submitted in this format. So I would recommend checking the CQs throughout the process and updating as you go along any final requirements. So you could start by writing a list at the beginning of the process. These are all the things that we need. This is how we need to submit. And when you're doing your reviews, it's just quite important to be checking, like, is this still correct for the submission? Allow a buffer time for technical issues or any final tweaks. Often with portals, uploads can take a bit longer than you expect. Sometimes as you put answers in, other questions might appear. So it's always good to kind of allow a bit of time for your upload to make sure that you've got some wiggle room if you need any final information. Ensure all attachments are included and correctly labelled, and use a checklist for compliance and completeness, and really just avoid any last minute uploads. So if possible, aim to submit a day early, check any time sensitive evidence is up to date, so your share price, certificates, signed declarations, all of that. You can have a really great bid process and then it can become really stressful at the last minute if the submission isn't handled correctly. So I think in order to, again, make it as stress-free a process as possible, allow yourself plenty of time, and maybe have somebody double check it. That's part of, again, how Advice Cloud work. We often do a QA process. So once somebody's uploaded, somebody else can come in and check that everything's there, everything is as it needs to be. And I think whether done internally or externally, it's a really helpful way to handle a submission and make sure that everything's there that needs to be before you hit the button. So the post-bid process. So once the bid writing stage and the submission is done, there's lots of work that can still be done. So a retrospective to kind of look at what worked within the bid process. Was there anything that didn't work? Were there any areas where we needed a bit more help or a bit more support from somebody else? And are there things that we can improve for next time? So a bid process, while being a kind of formal process, it's something that's constantly iterating, and each bid that you do should provide additional things to work on and strengthen for next time. Following things like results, you can get debriefs and feedback, you can gain some useful insights from buyers. There's outcome management, so what to do if you win or if you don't win. Negotiation and finalisation, so agreeing the contract and delivery terms, and updating your bid library. So it's really important that when you've spent all this time reviewing and capturing great content, you want to make sure that that's retained for next time so that you've got a quicker start next time around and you can be pulling in previously well-written content and tweaking it. It just helps you speed up your bid process every time. And then pipeline refresh, so requalify targets, look ahead. So all of these things are things that we're going to be covering in the next webinar in this series. So that will be post-bid, so what to do after you submit. And it should be happening within the next month. So look out for information on that. So finally, we'll just talk a bit about how we can help. So we offer framework access as a starting point. So if you're looking at certain bids or certain, with your ideal customer profile, you might see that those customers are using particular frameworks to get their business. And so step one might be ensuring that you're on the right frameworks. And that's where Advice Cloud can really help you from the get-go. So we run detailed kickoff sessions. We have tailored response guides and documents helping you with that storyboarding stage. We do a minimum 3-draft review process, and then we manage quality assurance, upload and submit to make sure that everything is a really smooth process for you and help you to get onto those frameworks. Once you're on the framework, we have ad hoc bid services. So again, we can offer a minimum 3-draft review process. We can enhance your internal capacity by either supporting with writing or, again, facilitating storyboarding or win theme workshops, acting as your reviewers or your QA, whatever it is you need within that bid process, we can enhance your capacity. We support with all gov tender processes, so right through from kind of pre-qualification, RFIs, RFPs, all of those we're available to support with. And we have guaranteed compliant responses. So we'll work with you to ensure that we're giving you the best outcomes we possibly can. And then finally, we have PSGE. So this is our public sector growth engine. It's a more structured, independent evaluation of your processes. We offer bid teams as a service, and we are able to offer bid management, account management, writing, peer review, and submission. So all of that is kind of encompassed within this one service, PSGE. So if you have any additional questions about any of our services, the team are more than happy to help. Finally, we've mentioned the frameworks briefly, but we've got G-Cloud coming up later in the year. So G-Cloud is the largest CCS tech procurement framework, and the 15th iteration, which will be opening in October, has the addition of further competition this time around. There are going to be some changes basically with the next iteration of G-Cloud. So what's changing? Buyers can now run competitive call-offs, so it will require strong tailored bids. There's going to be price, quality, and social value evaluations, so not just framework compliance. And then there are optional accreditations, so tax and cyber essentials, which can help demonstrate assurance in your bid. So how can we help? We can write clear, high-scoring call-off bids. We can showcase value and additional social value effectively and help you really demonstrate your abilities, and we can review and refine your submission for maximum impact. So we are starting to help people and onboarding clients for G Cloud. We're expecting it to open on October 23rd, but there's loads of stuff that we can be doing in advance of that. So if you're interested, again, there'll be a link within the slides, and you can book a chat with us to talk about how we can help you. Final poll. This one I think is about how you found this session today. So has it been useful, very useful, a bit useful, not useful at all? Any results are greatly appreciated so we can continue improving for next time. Great, I'm happy to see that majority of you think it's very useful, and we've had no not useful, so that's great. Fab. Okay, so we're moving on to the Q&A section. Christina, are you ready with the questions?
Yes, yeah, we've got a good few questions here, and we've got a good 10 to 15 minutes to get through all of your questions. So if there's any more that you'd like to drop into the questions bar at the top, then please do so. The first question I've got here is, what is your view on using internal AI apps like Copilot in the bid response process?
I think it can have a place within the bid response process. We mentioned it briefly earlier, the kind of blank page syndrome and that really difficult bit of just getting started. So I think AI and things like Copilot can be a really great starting point and an amazing way to just get an answer down. The most important bit with that is then the review process, because I think that's where, if you use something like AI to kind of increase your pace at the beginning of the process to just get that response out there, then you've given yourself more time for reviewing, for tweaking, for kind of tailoring that voice and adding things. So I think it's a really useful tool, but I would see it as the first stage in a process that then needs tailoring, editing, checking, the same that anything else would. I think it can cause problems when people create an answer and then just leave it as is. So yeah, I would always see it as the first step within a wider process.
Great, yeah, I'd really agree with that. We have another question here that says, if an opportunity doesn't completely align with your strengths, but they are a target organization, should you qualify out, or is there still potential to write a strong bid?
I think you can have a really rigid qualification process if that works for your company, and you can see that there are certain things that you might not hit and it's like, oh, this isn't right, but it's always going to come down to the team's decision. And if you decide to go for a bid because they are a target client, for example, but you think maybe your offering isn't going to be as strong, there's still so much you can get out of the bid process. Like, it's a really good opportunity to surface any gaps in experience or content and help you build that out. I've also definitely seen people win bids that are cold bids that they're not sure they're going to win. So I think if it feels like you have resource and you have a good enough story and it's a kind of target client, then it's definitely worth putting a bid in, but seeing it as an opportunity as well to grow, your internal resources.
Great, thank you. And then another question here says, if you have limited time to work on a bid, or perhaps the issue could also be limited capacity, what is the most important thing to think about when writing?
Again, I think if you've had time to do the storyboarding at the start, then you should have a sort of clear bit. It can be quite tempting to cut that part out of the process when you've got a short period of time. It can be tempting to just dive straight in with the writing, but the reality is you're going to end up kind of having to spend longer later fixing things if the message isn't clear from the start. So I think really focusing on those early stages of storyboarding and win theme creation can help just give everybody a very clear message to be writing about. And then I would just say, when it comes to writing, I would really focus on mirroring the language of the question, because that is how you keep linking back to the question and ensure that every single part of the question is answered. It's clearly signposted for an evaluator, and also it helps highlight to you if you've missed anything. If when you're reading your response you realise that actually none of this responds to a very clear part of the question, then that gives you something to go back and fix. So yeah, I would really think if you've got limited time, I would really strongly suggest focusing on storyboarding and mirroring the language of the question.
Great, thank you. We've had one of our attendees say, we rarely lose any bid at the RFI/P stage. We often do the bare minimum to get through to the next stage. Do you have any original ideas about how to stand out from the crowd with minimum effort?
I think with things like this, again, it's kind of on your win themes. With public sector bidding, you're quite held by what the process is. There's limited ways that you can, basically there's limited resources that you can create outside of what's asked for to kind of demonstrate every time what you're doing. But again, I think answering the question, but if you've spent time at the start just thinking about those win themes, that could be an hour-long session. So it doesn't have to be particularly time heavy or resource heavy on your key, but just having a really clear idea from the start of like, these are our messages, these are what we want to get across, and how those align with the messages of the customer. I think that does help you stand out. Like it is clear when you read a bid that has that sort of golden thread running through it of like, these are the things that we're really offering and these are our strengths. Excuse me. So yeah, I think just spending again that bit of time up front, if that can be a half-day workshop, then great. If that's an hour, also great. Like there's lots to be gained from just spending that initial thinking time at the start that can help you really pull out those kind of key messages.
Great, yeah, thank you. That's all the questions we have now. If anyone else does have any more questions, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us and we can answer them via email later on.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us for today's session on writing a winning bid response. So I really hope you found it useful and have taken away some practical tips you can apply straight away. And don't forget to register for the next session in this series, which will focus on the post-bid process. If you want any tailored support, please do get in touch with the team. And we've got a whole bank of accessible resources in our Knowledge Hub, which you can find on our website or through our social channels like LinkedIn and YouTube. If you're watching this recording on YouTube, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more public sector procurement tips and advice, and follow us on LinkedIn to stay up to date with all the latest from the public sector and from us at Advice Cloud. So thank you again so much for joining, and good luck with your next bid.